So basically, we'll be going over questions relating to preparation for the application, and then application related questions, and then training program questions. And then as you're listening to the answers, for the audience, you feel free to think of any questions you would like to ask the guest speakers, and we'll ask them at the end of our questions that we have. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Alyssa to start off asking the first section of questions.
Okay, hello everyone. So our first section is preparation for application. And one question we had was how and when did you find out about CLS and what motivated you to pursue it? So feel free to one of you to answer the question.
I can go. Can you guys see me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So how and when did you find out about CLS and what motivated you to pursue it? I actually found out about CLS my junior year when I was at Cal State East Bay in my micro class. My professor would have one of her previous students that was in the program or graduated from CLS come speak to us and kind of do like a career day. So that's how I found out about CLS. And then what motivated me to pursue it was I was originally pre-med, but I really like the lab work. So it's kind of the middle point of like being in the medical field and doing laboratory work. I don't know if Jacqueline wants to.
Yeah, I can. So I actually found out my sophomore year of college, my second year of college. Um, I guess for perspective, I graduated from college 2021. So I found out second year, I actually have a business degree and a micro degree, and I originally started as business, but quickly found out like well, it's like very useful in everyday life for any job that you do. It wasn't for me to pursue completely, and I think I still miss science. But the problem is I can't watch anything gory. I cannot deal with cadavers. I can't. I'm also get really sensitive when I talk to people, but I did want to work in the medical field, so I actually volunteered at one of the children's hospitals at near my area. And during that program, they were telling me, or the director was kind of sitting everyone who wanted to be a volunteer down and was kind of explaining different roles. And she said, hey, I know nobody knows about this job, but there's something called CLS. And it's really, it's an up and coming field. There's going to be a lot of jobs opening in the next few years. No one knows about it. You don't have to talk to patients, but you still contribute. So you can still get that sense of fulfillment. And like it's cool, it's science-based. And she actually was able to slip me into the lab there. And that's kind of where I committed and found and talked to actual working CLSs. And I was lucky to have that opportunity when I was so young, because usually labs are not open to volunteers for many different reasons, but they were willing to take me. And honestly, it's not a lot of school time for pretty good money right out, and you can be really young doing that with very, very minimal debt. And that is a really good reason to like want to pursue it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Because I also was thinking about doing the medical field route, going into my undergrad, because I definitely wanted to do something in the healthcare industry, but I just didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. Like at first I wanted to actually do dermatology. Like I wanted to be a doctor, do dermatology and everything. But then I kind of found a love for like research and also laboratory work. And then I kind of found out through like, other students and also just in my micro class too, like about the CLS program, and that kind of also like made me persuaded me to kind of go into that field instead. And now I'm like really excited, hopefully to get into the CLS program too. But thank you guys for your answers on that. And then another question we had was, did you have work experience relevant to medical laboratory science prior to pursuing CLS program?
I did. I when I was doing my undergrad still, I was a lab assistant for the biology labs. And Then after, as soon as I graduated, I got a job as a clinical laboratory assistant. And I graduated in 2020, so it was right in the middle of the pandemic. So all the biotech labs in the Bay Area were pretty much running COVID. So as a clinical lab assistant, you get to work super close to the CLS, and I had a team of maybe like 10 people. So it was really nice to get like firsthand experience of what the CLS actually does. And it was different because the program you'll train in the hospital versus a biotech, you're kind of focused on one thing and we're running molecular, but you still kind of get to experience some of the same things. Like you still know about CLIA, OSHA, inspections, like when the state comes to inspect you. So it's a really good experience before you want to apply to be a CLS.
I also had work experience prior to pursuing the program. I think when I first found out about CLS in my second year, like I said, I created kind of like a 5-year plan for myself. So I kind of told myself within 5 years, I'm gonna try and make it, like be licensed, and I did. I was really lucky, but I did, and I think prior planning is really important, and work experience is like crucial. Before pursuing the CLS program, I think you cannot really be super competitive without it. And it teaches you a lot of skills, not just getting into the program, but being able to succeed, be competent, have your teammates trust you. And I think that experience as a laboratory assistant is incredibly important. I worked at 2 different hospitals. Right when I graduated, I got in as a lab assistant, just like a processor, specimen processor at a hospital, a mid-level hospital, mid-sized hospital. And that was really good experience in terms of understanding what the tubes are, getting familiar with the workflow, understanding how the lab works as a whole. And then I actually moved to a bigger hospital, which is I became a lab assistant there as well as a specimen processor. But then that's also where I ended up doing my internship as well for the program. But I think it's those skills that are so crucial that makes that like it kind of makes or breaks you. And I know San Jose doesn't have like a technical portion as part of their interview, but your whole internship is an interview. And being a lab assistant really is a benefit to them. You get to learn the lab information system beforehand as a lab assistant. You get familiar, and it makes it a lot easier for your trainers to teach you as well when you are a CLS. You just kind of understand the workflow better. You understand how the lab, all the different moving departments work together. So I highly recommend as a specimen processor. I always recommend specimen processing because that was where I originated from. And that one's the only one where you really get to touch every single department of the lab. And I know it's really hard to touch places like blood bank as a lab assistant. A lot of places don't have, at least in the Southern California, they don't have lab assistants in the blood bank. But specimen processing is the closest you get to like exposure to those tests. And you get exposure to micro tests, you get exposure to pathology, you get exposure to core lab. It's a crucial, when all the specimens are passing through your hands before getting to where they need to go. You just learn so much critical thinking skills, and you really do need that work experience. It also helps so say like you get into a hospital that does offer a program. Um, Being a good lab assistant will show them, hey, you might be a good CLS, right? So I think that no matter what, whether it's a biotech lab, hospital, your science, like whatever research lab you did in school, which I didn't do a research lab during my time at UCI, but I think you have to have that basis to be competitive, and it helps you with your personal statement. It helps you with your interviewing, and it's just you only stand to benefit, especially if you can succeed, and you know quickly or not if it is for you or if it's not for you.
I had a question to add on to that. So, what was the experience like for you looking for a lab assistant job? Did you just like kind of just apply and shoot your shot at hospitals in your area?
I did apply and shoot my shot. I was lucky enough to get in. Because I know nowadays I heard for you guys, it's just like it's getting more popular. I heard CLS is like starting to get more well known, which is crazy because back then it was just like no one knew what it was. But I was explaining to my parents, nobody knew what it was. But uh I shoot my shot. You try your best to make yourself. I mean, you have what you have, right? You have whatever you have from school. Probably you guys are just coming out from undergrad. So you just have what you have from school. When you interview, it's really important you're available. I think availability is really important. And also just you have to boost that kind of confidence, the kind of confidence that makes them think that you can do a good job. I would apply widely though, and don't limit yourself to just processing, even though I'm like I was a processor, but micro lab assistant, pathology lab assistant. I kind of whatever gets you in, whatever is you're able to explore, though I always will vouch for processing first.
Thank you for that.
I also had like an additional question on top of that. It was just like, would you recommend working while you're in the CLS program, or did you guys work while like once you got in, like as a lab assistant?
You won't really have time to have another job because you're
Yeah.
already working Tuesday through Friday, and you're gonna want to spend every minute you're not working studying. I do know some CLSs that did work like Saturday and Sunday as a lab assistant, but they already had been working as lab assistants at the hospital for before the program. So it wasn't like they were learning a whole new job or having to do something else. But it would just be really hard, really hard. But yeah.
I share the sentiment. I actually was working as a lab assistant at the place that I ended up interning at, and they offered me the option to stay, but they also totally understood if I did not
Yeah.
want to keep that position because they understood it's a lot. And also for me, my commute was a little bit longer, and I just knew I just couldn't be driving there like six days like a week. It just wasn't worth it to me. And like you said, you kind of want to focus on your schoolwork. You want to retain your mental health and sanity while you're in school
Yeah.
too. And I would reserve those weekends for eating good food and like just kind of chilling as much as you can. So while you can, if like I absolutely understand if you have to make ends meet and that's you need extra pocket money wherever you want to go on vacation. I get that. But if you can afford it, I wouldn't. If you can like thank your parents or like I don't know, get a loan that's manageable for you, just at least for 1 year if you can save up. And maybe if you work as a lab assistant beforehand and you can save up your money then, and then you can take 1 year to just focus on yourself and passing, then the money will come back.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys know that most hospitals, I think there's only a few that don't, you will receive a stipend monthly. So it helps at least to cover your Starbucks. Just kidding. No. Yeah, it helps a lot though. So it is some income that you're getting.
Yeah, thank you for that because I definitely like have been trying to plan ahead just because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So I do want to get like a entry level like lab assistant job right after I graduate, hopefully. So I was just wondering like would you recommend like working once you get into the CLS program or anything? But thank you for like your advice and everything. But we have another question too. Like, what kinds of skills did you learn from work that was helpful during the training program, and how does work experience enhance your chances of admitting to the SJSU CLS program?
So the skills that I learned from work, um, I think I would say you get really good exposure if you can work at a lab before you apply. You'll get exposure to kind of like the HIPAA side of things, like the laws that go into like processing specimens, just how important like PPE is, all of that is really helpful, um, because it is a skill that you gain when you're working in a lab, just being really cautious of like working, you treat every specimen like it's infectious. So having that knowledge already when you're gonna apply to the program, and then work experience enhanced your I think if when you're already working as an assistant or somewhere in the lab, you it kind of helps San Jose State know like, okay, they actually have a good understanding of what work you're going to be doing versus, yeah, oh, let me kind of just do this and see if it's what I want to do because, it is a really intense program, and it's 1 year, and it's kind of like once you're in, you're like, okay, I have to finish. So they really want to be sure that it's someone that truly understands like what it is to be a CLS and what you do, the work that you're going to be doing. So if you already get to work close to a CLS, you know exactly kind of like what the work is going to be.
I think it's kind of like echoing my sentiments from before, but I think the most important skill besides technical skills is critical thinking.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's really hard to teach that without experience. Like I can't even really explain it in words, like the aspect of critical thinking that you need. And actually, I remember when I first hired as a lab assistant ever, um, the person that hired me, who I consider my like lab father because he's helped me like throughout my entire journey. The first thing he said to me was, if you can't critically think, you're gonna kill somebody, even as a lab assistant. And that kind of like puts things right into perspective. It was like my first job and it was a scary statement, but it like stayed with me because it's true. And being a lab assistant is the closest you can get while still being protected as much as possible from like something like bigger. CLSs should be able to catch some errors on the back end, but like a lot of that critical thinking, the urgency, like the sense of importance of what you're doing, the appreciation as a CLS comes from being a lab assistant. You appreciate more what they do. They do a lot of the brunt work, and it's not fun because I would never, honestly, if someone asked me, I would never go back to being a lab assistant. But it is so important. Like I couldn't trade those years. And I do recommend, just like as a tip from like that I heard from the hospitals around, you always want to be a lab assistant. Like the sweet spot is at least 2 years, is what I heard. At least 2 years. They can tell, the hospitals will tell if you're using them just for the program. They can tell. So plan to stick around, that's like probably my best skill. You probably want to stick around for a long time too. You learn how the lab works. You learn the like things that school doesn't teach you. School cannot teach you a lot of the stuff in the lab, looking at results, understanding which test can go and where, like little gray areas. There's always gray areas to the procedures. Like it can't teach you that. So at least I recommend 2 years if you can, or just try to make it not look like you're just using them. But always try to like be a lab assistant to stay so you can learn those critical thinking skills. It will just make you a better CLS in the end. You'll appreciate the people who are lab assistants a lot more so that they can never be mean to you. And you can never, and so like you won't be mean to them, and you guys can foster a good relationship because that's important too.
Then I have a question. So I don't know if I missed it from like the previous conversations, but did you guys both apply directly after you graduated from like undergrad, or did you take like a few years to like gain like experience? Like you said, like you recommend doing at least like 2 years maybe of like lab assistant work. Like, did you guys directly apply after you graduated from undergrad?
I waited 2 years to apply. So I got like a solid 2 years of work experience before I applied to be a CLS. But some of my friends went in straight after they graduated, and but they had I know that both of them that got in right away, they had a really solid research internship like under their belt, like maybe two or three over the years. So I know that helped them a lot go get it straight into the program. But I waited 2 years and I got my phlebotomy license. I did that in the 2 years that I was waiting to apply to CLS school.
Yeah, I don't know, it's really hard because every case for every student is so different. Even going through the application process, I applied, I think, 2 years out, but I wasn't really planning to apply. I kind of did a soft application, so I only just did a couple schools to see how I would do. And I was lucky enough to get in, but each case is different. You have to consider your GPA, how strong that is. Grades are really important nowadays. I think so too. In the program, they emphasize like I think you have better chances of success if you have a better GPA. So they really do look at that, is what I've heard. There's always chances though, but like it's not like the end of the world because I know a couple like of my coworkers who like they brought their GPA up and it was possible because they had like loads of work experience. But I always recommend 2 years. You can get in right away. You can be one of those people. But again, there's no stressing the importance of being a lab assistant, and getting that time period of your life where you are learning and allowed to make more mistakes without it being so detrimental to maybe the team or the patients. That's like your time to learn. And I applied for a job right away out of undergrad, but I didn't apply like right away to the program until I thought that I was ready. I spent almost a year at one hospital, and then at the current hospital I'm in, I spent almost a year as well as a lab assistant. So close to almost 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Because I think that's pretty reassuring, just because I think a lot of us post grad, like we want to just directly get into something like we want to do in the future, such as like the CLS program or, a really well-paying job. But I also do want to like enjoy my life post grad too. Like I want to be able to travel or do something like I probably won't be able to do once I get like a 9 to 5 or, like more of like a serious job later on. So thank you for that though.
Just want to add, the
Yeah.
lab assistant pay is not that bad, okay? Like it's okay.
Okay.
You can get up there. I mean, probably in
Mhm.
the Bay Area, you guys can get higher up than like the Southern California, but like you can go on like I went to Japan for quite a like you could do it. You can have a really good time. Like I had a Disney pass, went to Japan, like all in my time as a lab assistant, and I really treasured those moments before I went into the program. So yeah, I always recommend it. Enjoy your post grad life.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's very reassuring. And then we have another question, and it asks, which undergraduate courses do you think were most relevant to this profession? Are there any topics from those classes that stand out to you as being particularly relevant?
I'm gonna have to say my number one from the top, micro. Actually, I'm in the micro department right now, so I got hired as a micro CLS. You guys are all San Jose State, right? So, I did my program in Salinas. So if you guys apply, there's a contract with the Salinas Hospital. But then I actually got a job in San Jose. But I got hired as a micro CLS, and I loved micro when I was doing my training. So definitely everything you learn in your micro classes, you will use it, which is great because I even when you're going through the training, and you're having lecture for micro, it's like a very intense kind of rundown of everything you learned. So like your clinical micro that you took in undergrad and just like your basic micro, if you guys took virology, all of that, like you're gonna need all of it, all of it. And so it's really nice. When I was at East Bay, my professor was huge on us, how we like streaking our plates. And so I do that every day now. I streak plates. You look at a ton of E. coli every day. Staff, all of that. You like you'll see it again, and then it's really nice when you're working because you're like, okay, like I'm actually using what I was learning in school. And then anatomy and physiology, huge. I think they just added it as a recommendation, right? Like to the because you it wasn't required when I applied 2 years ago. But anatomy and physio huge because I mean you're gonna touch in every topic that they go over in the training program, some anatomy and some physiology. Chem, not as much, right? Like it's more in chemistry, you're a little bit more, it's definitely more physiology, like in your chem, because it's more like, okay, you're gonna learn about like if someone has high lipids, like what is that? Why is that relevant? And then you're gonna know like, okay, like they're more prone to like a heart attack or things like that. So, and hematology, for sure, hematology. I think yeah, I think those are like the big ones because blood bank is like you'll when you're in your blood bank rotation, it's a lot of hematology. So like definitely micro hematology, and like your anatomy physio classes.
Actually, like those extra classes, like medical micro, clinical chem, all those classes that they want you to take that most undergraduate courses don't offer, and that you have to take like outside
Yeah.
of school. Or else I had to at UCI. But like, those are actually really relevant. I agree with chemistry. Whatever chemistry you learn in school, it's totally different. It's like a different field spectrum of chemistry. It's not the same. But it is, I think, one of the hardest sections of the CLS program to understand. I actually personally didn't take anatomy and physiology. I was that girl, so you're probably right. Like it probably would be better if I did. Oh, maybe I took physiology once. It's like been a second, but like I did not take anatomy. But I think actually immunology. Okay, like get your immuno down. Like get it down now because I heard from like not just me but like my coworkers like blood bank, the section can make or break you as a CLS. Like you might not get it and you might love it. I'm in core lab, but I love blood bank. I love the theory behind it. I could think about it for like 3 hours straight because I did once. But I wouldn't, I mean, don't do that. But I would recommend you get your immuno down like hard because that is like everything when it comes to blood bank. It is all theory. And if you go to your section and you just can't keep up with the theory, just get those pictures in your head, your antigen, antibodies, like actually pay attention to that one because that one's actually important and it seeps through micro and it seeps through in core lab in chemistry when or serology when you do HIVs, Hep Bs. It really seeps through. So I would say immunology. Hematology we don't get much exposure of in school, but like man, that's a big one too. That'll be a scary one. So yeah, I agree with whatever she's micro is already she already said. There's enough for micro. I was also a micro major, but I don't know. For a micro for me, like CLS micro, I feel like I didn't remember anything except viruses, but probably that's why I was more core lab and blood bank. But immuno for sure, just it's everywhere. Just really get it down now. I know they say it like they do it every year, I think, for like courses. Like they always like brush past like immuno something
Yeah.
science, right? Like they always have that. And just yeah, pay attention to that. Like really, really do pay attention to that.
I wanted to add, I actually, even though I had graduated 2 years and for my undergrad, when I was in the program, I went back to all my undergrad notes for micro and immunology because they do it in such a fast kind of like surface teach it to you. So they're expecting you to have had a really strong understanding of immunology, which is good that you mentioned that because I wish I would have known that before. I would have took some time to like refresh on immunology before I got in the program because you kind of don't have time to teach it to yourself all over again. So if you guys can get like a solid understanding of immuno before the program, like just freshen up on like your antibodies and like your B cells and your T cells and all that, it will help you so much because you'll cover it in micro and blood bank when you're in your rotations. And I'm sure she knows, but when they're teaching you in your rotations and blood bank, they're just talking about antibody this, antibody that, like you just better hope you know what they're talking about.
And that's facts. That's straight facts. Like you have to be able to keep up, honestly. And it's like they can explain it to you a million times, but if you cannot make the picture in your head of what those antigens and antibodies and what the cell is doing, like, oh, it's over. And since you guys are still young, please, please do yourself a favor and get used to immuno. Love it, breathe it so that it'll be easier for you later.
It's not to scare you guys, it's just to be prepared because I wish someone would have told me
Yeah. You
that
can make
because I
it.
think there's this kind of you kind of think like, oh, it's like new, so I'm gonna get have the time to learn it. They're gonna be patient with me, but you guys have to remember that it is a graduate program, and you're already expected to have all these like this kind of knowledge underneath. And I didn't know how strong I needed to have it, so it's good that we're telling you now, just so you guys, are prepared in the future. Like, okay, I should know at least like freshen up on the immunology.
No, thank you for that because I definitely, when I took immunology, it like went through like when I was taking it, it was definitely hard for me to like make connections or, really understand the concepts that I learned in immunology. And we kind of brushed on it like in my pathogenic micro class, like the first lecture or two. But, I definitely like forget some of the concepts, like what kind of tips would you recommend to like help you like refresh on that on immunology and like other topics?
Really understand your like your B cells and your T
Hmm.
cells, just how antibodies work. And so your antibody and your antigen relationship is really important to understand. Um, just to give you guys kind of an example, it's because like in blood bank, you can't give, like an A a type A person like B blood, and you have to understand why. And it's because, like the B type person has the anti-A antibody. So if you give it to a person that has the antigen for it, it's gonna create a whole thing in their bloodstream. And so just seeing back then, I wouldn't have been able to just remember that. So it's, like now I can because, I went through, now it's kind of just like, I don't know, just one of those things you don't forget now, after you're practicing it for so long. But in the moment, you are kind of like, oh my God, like I have to remember this and it's kind of hard like to understand it. So just yeah, not all of immunology, just mainly like your antibody and antigen relationship and like why they're important. That's pretty much it. Not yeah, definitely don't go into all of immunology. Sorry, I should have made that more clear.
Yeah, I always say be visual as much as possible when it comes to blood bank. It like you have to think of it in your head. I mean, it's all in your head, right? But when they're starting to talk, like it is your head that's trying to see like, oh, are these cells on the outside of the cell? Are they the red cells that we're talking about? Or are we talking about the serum? Like, and those are two components, which I think they just don't really touch upon in school, which makes sense. It's not really in that scope. But if you can understand those basic relations, it'll make the layers outside a lot easier to get and understand. Honestly, I like just found out about ChatGPT. Okay, like I didn't even know about that until literally like maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago. But I didn't realize how helpful it is as a tool to help you break down difficult concepts. And a blood bank, I was like typing like, hey, I was like, hey, if this is reacting like this, like if my why is my D antigen like this? It's really helpful to use those outside resources. Like use your teachers, or whoever you have, right? Your like professors, if you have anyone like that. But like use ChatGPT as a tool to help you better understand if it will like give you an easier way to get it. Always just use it for anything. But I mean, don't use it to like cheat or whatever, but like use it to like really actually get it, like so that you can regurgitate it back to somebody when they ask. Especially because that like blood bank does relate to chemistry a lot and it makes you a better tech just to know like, hey, why are they bringing me this cord Billy? Like it's because something happened on that end. And I even had to explain that recently to a coworker, like why we that test reflex to us, like why those interactions actually happen and why we end up having to run it, some of them, and why we don't. And I think that just makes you a better tech in general. Like you're more informed, you can make better decisions for the patient, you know why things are happening. You're not just blindly running samples and then just like, okay, here's the number, right? You kind of know like why are they getting it run? Like what is the bigger picture? Like what is happening on the back end in blood bank that we don't really we might not know about. So yeah, just take with that what you will.
Yeah, thank you so much for the tips and everything because I think everyone definitely learns differently, and it's hard for certain people to like absorb the information. So, like you said, like I use resources like AI or ChatGPT to like break down concepts that I don't really understand that I learned like during lecture or if my professor tries to like teach me, like if I don't get it, I definitely use like ChatGPT to just kind of break down the concepts and help me visualize what I'm actually trying to learn and apply it. But thank you so much. And then our second section is application related questions. And our first question is, what was the overall application in stepwise? For example, first finish all required courses, then what should we do next?
I will try to remember. But yes, definitely your courses, and then you have to take a trainee license. You apply for a trainee, like a CLS trainee license, and you submit all your classes. That's like the only requirement you need for that trainee license. is to have all your classes. So you'll submit all your classes, your transcripts. You'll get your CLS trainee license, and then after that, you can apply to the program. Once everything, all your other, as long as the GPA, you have your personal statement done. So I believe how it works and how I remember was you email them and tell them you want to apply to the CLS program. Is that what we did? And then they email you back to share a Google Doc.
Yeah, yes,
And
you're right.
then you start uploading all your things. So you'll upload the trainee license, you'll upload your personal statement, you'll upload your three letters of rec, your resume, and I believe all your immunizations. No,
Yeah.
no, no, that's after. That's just the
What?
application. Yeah, yeah. That's just the application. And then once you submit that, um, they will tell you, I think, in a couple weeks if you make it to the next round, which means you're accepted into the first round, which is before you go to your interviews at the hospital. So that I think I got it all, but Jacklyn, you can add if that wasn't right.
No, I think you honestly remembered a lot more than just totally
Yeah,
glossed over that.
I forgot about the trainee license.
Yeah,
But yeah,
just
that one.
glossed
So that
over
one is,
the.
yeah, that one is you'll apply on the CDPH website
Mhm.
for a CLS trainee license. And you need that throughout the whole year you're in your training program. So you will have to renew it one time.
Yeah. Get
And I
that ASAP.
recommend getting it early.
You
If
have
you're already
to.
planning to apply to the program, I think I applied for the CLS training license like 3 months before. Things are, still weird with the way how long it takes for things to process because since the pandemic. So I know that I got mine maybe in a month. Mine kind of took a while. So definitely don't do that last minute. Don't apply for your CLS training license last minute.
Yeah. Just like a reminder, San Jose requires that license. It's not like a optional. I would just get it beforehand if you can. I had like a friend who didn't know that and applied and then got rejected because she just didn't have the license ready in time on hand. Just don't be that person. Just try to
Yeah.
get it done. Like, yeah, but I think you got it. Like, yeah, we had the first round interviews. I remember that. And then those interviews though it's pretty much like almost like a 50-50 yes or no though that you pass. It's really hard to get slots in the hospital. There's a lot of students now, but there's just not enough training positions and trainers. And it's just like getting even into that interview round, you're ranked in like a classified way. And even from there, like you're gonna probably you can get weeded out really easily too without a spot. So, but that's pretty much the progression of the application. Get your recommendations early, like make it really easy for your recommenders. I made like a cute little like sheet like that had clickable links that I just sent to all my recommenders so they could see my personal statement, see my grades, see all the information they needed to make a good letter. And it didn't require them asking me for anything. Everything was there, everything was clickable, everything was readable. And I had the template there ready for them. They knew where to send it and by when. And always send a follow-up email like a couple weeks before it's due or whatever, just in case they haven't sent it. Always get those done early and start your personal statement ASAP because you're going to want to refine it as time goes on.
Yeah. And so when the application window opens, like the window to apply, you have the whole time. I don't remember how long it is. Maybe it's like 2 months or 3 months that so from the day that it opens to the day that it closes, you have all that time to upload your documents. So you don't just and then you'll send an email to them and say my application is complete, and then that will be like your submission date that they'll look at. So you have, over the time. So if like the first thing you get in is your CLS training license, then it takes you like, you have time to collect all your letters of recommendation. And, that's another thing too. Give them time to write it. Don't make anybody write your letter of rec like super last minute because you really want your letters of rec to be really strong. So, and most the people you're going to ask probably have full-time jobs, so, they're busy themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. But we actually have a question in the chat too. Someone asked, did any of you consider applying out of state?
No, I actually only applied to San Jose State. Yeah.
Um, I I considered it, but as a last resort. So again, I kind of soft applied, so I only applied to like a very small number of schools. I didn't even do the California like schools, like all of them or anything. I actually missed like a couple that I really did want to apply to just because I had decided to apply so late. Okay, before November, guys, if you're trying to fall, don't decide in November to apply like me, okay? Like make that decision back beforehand. But I only considered it if the first round didn't go well. If I did a first full round and it didn't go as I thought and I wasn't getting as many interviews as I thought I was gonna be getting, then I would have considered out of state. But the out of state option, it's difficult because some requirements to get into California are difficult. Like you might need to stay out there a year because not all every state trains for the full year. They only train for like 3 months, and that doesn't hit California CLS requirements. So you're like kind of have to stay out there for a longer period of time before applying to come back in. And applying to come back in is like a whole difficult process. And I know this from other CLSs that have done it. It's just a lot harder. If you can go with California, just because we are a very valuable license. It's a very valuable license to have a California license. And it's one of the most difficult, which is why the training period is so long. But if you can't wait and you just want to expand your options, then yeah, apply out of state, but make sure you're researching which schools will make it easier for you to transfer back to California.
Thank you, because that definitely like put into perspective what the application process is kind of like and the kind of steps you have to take post grad, like if you do want to get into the program. We actually have another question. What was the most difficult part of the application process, and what advice would you give to students who are applying now?
I would say the most difficult part is probably just getting your prereqs done and your personal statement. It's probably what you're going to stress over the most, your personal statement, because you know you get one shot at it. But advice wise, my biggest advice is just don't wait for the last minute to do things. In your personal statement, really emphasize your work experience. I don't remember what the prompt was, but I remember what my personal statement was about. I remember writing about um I'm trying to remember now. I don't really remember, but I just remember kind of at the end of it putting what I wanted to do with my CLS license to make the medical field better and like how, you emphasize kind of you see like a bigger picture um in your personal statement and like to benefit, like the hospital, benefit patients, benefit like a business, like the business, kind of like ways to, be more efficient working as a CLS. So really just spend a good amount of time on your personal statement. Really, and another one too, make sure you guys get letters of recs from people that can really truly say like great things about you. Thankfully, they took out the requirement that for a it doesn't have to be a professor because sometimes we know professors have a lot of students and it's always not that personable when you get a letter of rec from them unless you were their lab assistant or you were in their office hours all the time. But my letters of rec were from my lab director, my direct lab manager, and then my lab supervisor. And so I worked really close with them, and those letters of rec, they were able to, and the title was, like they hold big titles, like the lab director, to write a letter of rec for you is going to show. And so, really, I guess that's another thing too. Like when you're working as a lab assistant or whatever, wherever it's at that you're going to ask for letters of rec, and just in general, like you should be really great at your job because you really want people to be able to say like phenomenal things about you because that's going to make you stand out in your application.
Yeah, stressing that point of you want to give them good things to say, right? So the most important thing you can do is don't focus too much on the end goal. Focus on what you have to do now, right? Just like if you're a lab assistant or whether you're doing school, make sure you do a good job because those are all components of your application. And actually, really the most difficult part is having a weakness in your application. So try your best to fill in the gaps. I honestly think also understated portion is the interviews. Just get good at interviewing now. Get good at talking about yourself. Like, have a good purpose statement. And I always recommend anyone who asks for personal statement advice. The reality is, not everyone is going to have a unique story as to why they want to do something. Everyone has pretty much almost the same reasons, And I think if I was a reader too, I want more authenticity from your personal statement than a flashy story. I want the truth, right? And genuine sincerity rather than maybe like fluffing up what is honestly like is just you like the job and you feel fulfilled, right? Try to kind of curate like a more authentic statement based on really what your reasons. Like I even added that, like honestly, like I couldn't do the gory parts of being a nurse or a doctor. Like I can't. I respect them for that, but it's not my personality. I can't even watch gory movies, like and I put that, but it was sincere, like you could see it as a weakness, but it was my sincerity as well. That it was like, I like this job because it's not that, but I can still help, like I can still do a good job with this. I just can't do this portion. Like that's why I want to do it. It's like a part of your reason. And it's nothing flashy and it's nothing super special, but it's, like I think that's when you're doing a personal statement, don't stress about making it perfect, but make it genuine first, then refine it along the way.
No, definitely thank you for this tips because, I've been trying to like figure out what I want to do for my personal statement just because I do want to apply maybe a year out after I graduate. So I've been thinking now about what my reasons are, but definitely like enjoyed the tips that you guys gave me. We have another question. What was the preparation to write your personal statements? How long did it take you to write them?
I am the worst at writing any kind of essay, which is why I am a science major, but it took me probably like a solid month to write mine because I would start and then I would be like, oh, I would erase it and then start and erase it, but that was just my huge struggle. Like always when I was in college, I was just writing. So mine took me about a month. But once I started, and I did get help from my sister who was really good at writing essays. One of my best friends was like really good. So they helped me a lot to just kind of start. And so, just getting tips from people. And oh, and also one of my I got to see examples too. Not from like specifically to CLS, but if you can read, if someone will share like a personal statement with you, it's nice to read them and just kind of see like what they like the style of them and kind of how people start their introductions. That was my hardest part. Like, do I say like, "Hi, my name is Yuriana," like, like, or do I start with like something flashy to say? I had no idea. Like, I think I had to write a personal statement in one of my English classes, and I don't really remember, but if you guys can get examples of how people write and how like they kind of do their intros, I feel like that helps a lot because then you kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is how personal statements go. But yeah, I took like about a month to do mine.
Um, I I I think of myself as a pretty good writer. I really liked it when I was in class, just probably because from my love of just reading books. But sorry, she's sorry, she's bringing a problem. But like, um, I I actually did go off with like a flashy start, but it was based on personal experience. And I actually told you guys about that. It was like when my manager was like, if you don't critically think, you could kill someone. That's how I started mine off. Because that was really what overarched my entire journey. But I think what really helps in the personal writing statement process is you're really focused on structure, right? And trying to like fit all these boxes. But what really you should do Like, trust me on this. Like, get up Google Doc, whatever, or pen and paper. Just splurge everything. Just like write everything you can think about. That's part of your story, like everything. It could be like pages long, whatever you think is beneficial. When you go throughout your day and you remember something, hey, like that's like something that is close to me in my journey, or like I feel that, then I would just write it down in that, like store it away as like this big storage bucket so that when you do get back to being serious about your personal statement, you can pick and choose these things and you have some natural words that have already flowed out of you and it feels more sincere for you as well because I think that's a big help in interviewing is if you can believe in your personal statement and that it's authentic about you, your interview will be authentic. Like it will come out. Like the words will come out because you believe in them and that was what you were thinking. Like those were thoughts you came up with. And so if you could just blurb everything, just pick the few that, like that fit the certain prompt. And because if you apply to many schools, they'll have different prompts. And some of those things you said will fit in some prompts and some won't. And you have advantage of like you can pick and choose from a bunch of these things and you can start compiling it now since you guys are still so, so young. Like you guys are not that much like younger than us, but like you guys are still so young. So you have some time to really compile a good,
Yeah.
like vomit paper.
I have one thing that one of my professors told me that always stuck with me, and I really used it at this time. When you're writing your personal statement, I had asked him once, am I you kind of you have to hype yourself up in your personal statement. And sometimes that feels really weird. And then I remember him telling me like when you're applying to programs like this, it's not the time to be modest. Like you have to think of yourself as like the best and kind of, this is your time to really show, pick your best moment at work that made you stand out as an example to write in your personal statement. Like I'll give you guys, actually, I just remembered. So when I wrote in mine, I talked about we had like my company was really small that I worked for. So my CEO came in, and a lot of times when you work in smaller labs, you can meet like the CEOs and stuff. And he taught me how to do coding on the liquid handlers there at the thing. Had no, I like never touched like any type of coding, anything like that. And I wasn't really into like computers like that or computer science, anything. So he taught me that, and that experience, I ended up writing about it in my personal statement because that's like a very not everybody can do that, especially as a lab assistant. That's like you go to school to be, to code on the computers and get them to program and stuff. So a moment like that where it's like, okay, like, and I think I even put in my personal statement that I had no idea what this was, like the coding, but that I took the time to learn it on the clock. Like I took the time to read the books to know how to do it, and ended up becoming like the head of automation there at my job. And so things like that. And it does feel weird to brag about yourself, but you have to in your personal statement at least. So yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that was like I'm like Yuriana, like where I'm like the worst writer. Like it takes me hours, maybe even days to like write a paper where like an English class or just any like scientific paper. And so like that was the one thing like I was the most, I guess, stressed about or intimidating going into the whole application process was just like the personal statements and how long you guys like spent on it or what I should focus on. So I definitely enjoy like the tips and also like feeling reassured that I'm not also alone and feeling a little bit stressed about the personal statement aspect. But we have another question. Can you talk about the interview process, like what kind of questions were asked and what advice do you have for how to prepare for and succeed in the interview?
Are you talking about the hospital interviews? Or okay, so I don't know if you guys know this, but before you used to have to go into a panel interview with oh, yeah, okay. So before I guess all the education coordinators from the hospitals would all come together and you would have one interview and it was all of them, all the hospitals were there in front of you. They don't do that anymore. So now if you're interested in a hospital, you directly will contact the hospital and make an interview appointment with them. So you choose, if you want whatever hospital that you want to go to. I almost interviewed at all of them except for anything that was really down south. I didn't go down to Los Angeles. I think the farthest down I went was Bakersfield. And then the farthest north I went was the Bay Area, because I think Sacramento and Stockton all did theirs through Zoom. So some of them will be through Zoom. But if you can do in-person ones, way better, because you get a tour of the lab. It's more personable. Sometimes it'll be a group interview, so you'll get to meet other CLS students that are applying. I ran into a couple of them multiple times, which was kind of cool, because then we would, get to talk and you're sharing your experience with them and they're really stressed out with you. So that's how that part goes. And then the kinds of questions that I experienced was always, this was the same one I would get every time, was why are you picking this hospital? So with that, just really do some research before you go into the interview and just see what the hospital's about. Like what's the statement, like their hospital statement. They obviously know that you want to work there because you want to get trained and you want to get into the program. But if you can know like some cool fun facts about the hospital, or maybe like the ones that are from anyone that's from the area, from San Jose, like you can be like, oh, like I've always been seen here. I love this hospital, like, things like that. So like I'm from Salinas, and I did my training at Salinas. So I had told them, like I want to stay and work here, which was the original plan. And I was home too. So a lot of times the hospitals will want to keep you if you're local, because they want you to stay and work afterwards. They're going to invest a whole year in you. But yeah, definitely being prepared with why did you pick that hospital, and kind of have the same kind of that interview question, that kind of what you can bring to the table, as so that's a good one always to have prepared to answer. Jacklyn, you can add your experience.
Mhm. I actually only interviewed with 3 in San Jose because I live in Southern California. Like I was born and raised here in Orange County. So the only hospital that was really Southern at the time was Hoag at Newport Beach, and that is where I am at. But I think I heard from a student that they opened another Southern California hospital near here too, as like in the runnings. I think they're growing their list. San Jose is growing their list of hospitals they're partnering with. I only applied for 3 because I literally flew in the morning and came back to the Bay, like just to interview with a few others hospitals that I was maybe interested in as well. And I like them. I agree. The value of it being able to see a different lab, that it is really good. And actually, I don't even know, but I think that the labs in Northern California are like structured a little bit differently than Southern Californian labs. So it was cool to see that how it works. Sometimes you get some cool hospitals that you can interview with. My tips for interviewing is also just like ask insightful questions. Like you have to make yourself, like, you have to make them interested in you. Because I'll tell you, like, hot tip, they'll ask for second interviews for some of those hospitals. And then you won't even know. Most people don't even know that you can get a second interview at some of them. They use that first interview as a screening, and they'll invite you in for a second, third interview. So you want to have insightful questions. Again, think a lot of it comes from like work experience, right? If you can interact with their machines, if you can see during the lab tour and you see something you recognize, you actually have a genuine question about their like automated line, or like how do they troubleshoot this? But like it makes a world of a difference. They're like, hey, they don't just care about getting some program, they care about the intricacies of like what we do here. They know these machines. They're aware of this like program. And I think that makes you stand out. And I noticed some hospitals also ask you weird questions, like not standard interview questions. Like wacky questions. And I noticed it's like a way to like weed out interesting people too. So I don't know, just I think just answer genuinely. I always think just like if it comes from the heart, it'll come through to them. So yeah, just be prepared, have things to talk about, ask insightful questions. Don't be like sitting there and then back. Like try to make yourself, it's gonna be so cringe. It's gonna feel cringe, but you kind of have to like do it in a subtle way where you kind of have to show that like genuine wacky questions. I saw that the someone like to ask you like what's your favorite ice cream flavor? They'll ask like and it sounds weird because it sounds like icebreaker questions, but I can tell they're weeding people out. Like I can tell that they're weeding out the people who just give like normal like, oh, it's like mint chocolate. Versus people that are like, oh, like it's mint chocolate because it reminds me of this or something like that. Like they literally they're weeding out people. I don't know why. It's kind of weird, but I mean, I get it, whatever works. But I kind of feel like they are. But I'm not gonna name names for which hospitals do that, but like they do. So in group interviews, try to stand out. That one is like real competition. Like that one's actually like you're really comparing with people. And then in the giant interviews where there's like 10, 15 people where you think they're not watching you, they are. So just stay on your guard, be interesting, be interested, like actually be genuine and make eye contact with people. Like body language is everything, right? Like body language, show that your chest is facing them. You're actually interacting with some of their students who might talk to you. Your action, like it's just gonna help you. It's gonna be cringe, but just do it. I'm sorry about her. She's like really bad. But yeah, that's all.
No, don't worry at all. She's super cute. What type of dog is she? Is she a
She's a Bernedoodle.
Oh, that's so cute.
She's a puppy, so.
But thank you. And then we have when touring the labs you were interested in, what kind of things were you looking for, and what is the purpose of the lab tours?
Um, what kind of things were you looking for? When you're on the other end of it, you really want to just get into a hospital to train. But you know, getting the hospitals that offer the stipend, that those are all probably going to be on your number, like on your higher list to apply at or to interview at those. Um, Also, how many students do they take? So like Valley Med takes 6 students. Other hospitals will have one spot open. So, you definitely want to have like if you're in the Bay Area and you're planning on staying, like Valley Med up in your list, at least as number 2, if it's not your first pick, just because you know that they do take 6 students. So that's a huge tip I can give you guys. Um, if you what is the purpose of the lab tour? And the purpose of the lab tour is really just to show you what kind of, like equipment they're using, maybe their flow, like what you're kind of like getting into. It's really just to show you, just to show you what it is, because not everybody has seen like a hospital lab. But Jacqueline, you can add.
Um, I was interested in like how they organize the rooms themselves. Some places operate as like a just this one ginormous room and they have different sections without any dividers. And I just wanted to kind of see how the workflow went. Wanted to see what kind of a training would be like, how intimate it would be, how much attention they could give you. The volume level of the hospital matters. Are you okay with a really high volume, low volume, and also like the complexity they might get? Some hospitals, they are bigger and more prestigious, thus they will get more interesting cases. That could be a good or bad thing, right? Depending on what you want, right? Whatever your learning pace is. Maybe a high volume isn't for you to start off with, and maybe like a mid-volume level is more a little bit comfortable. We can get into more intimate training experience. It's depending what you look for, like, and the stipend is really important too, but most of them do offer one, I believe. And yeah, I don't know. I would just really consider what kind of a learning style you are, how far you want to go. Like for me, if I wanted to go up there, up where you guys are, like I would have to uproot my life here. So it really had to be worth it for me to like feel like, I could learn something more than what I could learn at the hospitals down here. So that's something to consider. I looked at their automated line. I was actually interested in their machinery. I just wanted to know what they used, what kind of LIS programs they use. Most hospitals these days use Epic. If you don't know what that is, you will know very soon. But I just kind of wanted to see what their vibe was, how friendly it is, the environment that they create, like the training quality, the trainers, who are the trainers, are they good? Are you going to be supported by your education coordinator if you do train there? There's a lot of like factors that you need to think about, not just like, oh, which the hospital is like the most famous, or like, oh, which hospital is close to me. You really want to think about your quality of training and if that is aligned with your, like with what you think will help you succeed. Because the worst thing that can happen is you're doing school and you hate where you're training, right? So just be careful where you pick and, ask insightful questions, don't waste your time. Yeah, and don't waste their time, right? So just
No, thank you. Because what so how many how many lab tours did you guys go on personally, like when you guys were applying?
I went on like at least 12. I did every hospital in San Jose. So like El Camino, Valley Med, Kaiser. I did Santa Cruz, Salinas, Bakersfield. Um and then I those were the only ones that were in person. And then I did maybe like 4 or 5 Zooms with like the Stockton, Sacramento, Stanford did theirs on Zoom. And I think Stanford Pleasanton did theirs in person also. So yeah, I I actually ended up I quit my job like I was when I was and I took the whole month off just to go on my interviews because it was I think over like a month period. Um, so yeah, and then well, I was getting ready to apply at another lab. That's why. But yeah, it kind of just worked out perfect. I decided to quit my job, take the month off to focus on the interviews because if you're working full time and hopefully you guys have, like a flexible job. But yeah, the traveling, like Jacklyn had to, take flights and I had, like driving down to Bakersfield and squishing all that in, you're gonna have to be missing work at least like, maybe like once or twice a week, depending on how many interviews you decide to go on. But the more you can interview at, the better you want to have, options make when you're applying at when you're doing your interviews at the hospital.
yeah. I only have, not including the lab I did do my internship with, I only toured two. And that was because I don't know if you remember, but the time in which they sent us the interview and it was only like 2 weeks. Like the
Yeah.
preparation time and my shifts were already scheduled. Like I worked per diem as a lab assistant, but for per diem back then it was like 4 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week. And I wasn't gonna move my shift, so I just bit the bullet, paid for the flight ticket, came in the
Yeah.
morning, came back at night because I had a shift the next day, and I only picked two hospitals besides this one to tour. So it's kind of just, again, it's picking but like she's right. Like actually it's better to put your eggs in like many baskets because you cannot get into the program without interviewing. Because they also choose. Like the hospitals are also choosing who they want, and you cannot be chosen if they don't know you. So, and it's probably better to go with Yuriana's route where you're interviewing with more. If you can take the time off, do that. Especially you guys live up there. If for me, it just wasn't feasible to
Yeah.
do that. It just wasn't feasible. But I mean, that would be the better option than kind of like doing what I did and just kind of like it was a calculated decision though. Like I knew exactly what I was getting into and I knew exactly my chances doing what I did. But I mean it worked out. But like it's still if you can just interview with a lot so that you have a better chance of hopefully becoming a student at one of them. Because you choose and they choose. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, San Jose is actually your middleman. So it's like a lot of factors there that you don't know what's going on in between. And it's better that you just interview with a lot of people.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you guys know this, but when you how they pick the hospital for you, like Jacqueline was saying, is that you're gonna they give you the time to go on the interviews, however long it was, like 3, 4 weeks to meet all the hospitals, and then you submit your top three or your top 10. I don't remember. Yeah, top three or yeah, top three. You submit your top three choices. So just for example, I put Salinas first, I put Valley Med second, and I think my third was El Camino. And so then you submit it to San Jose State, and then San Jose State's going to look at okay, they're going to look. Salinas, my first pick was Salinas. So what did Salinas think about me? If they gave them a yes for me, that's a match. I'm set to go. But let's say that Salinas said no, then they're going to go down. My second choice was Valley Med. So then they go look at Valley Med. Did Valley Med say yes to me? If they said yes, that's a match. Then I would end up training at Valley Med. So that's how it works. So it has to be a yes from both, from you and from the hospital, because they won't, I mean, I don't know if I don't think they say yes to everybody at some hospitals. I don't know other ones, but, they'll have their own top five that they picked from the round of students. So, you have, I mean, three chances, right? Three hospitals to get into. So that's how that works. That was a little tricky for me to understand back then. So just so you guys know that that's how it works.
It's brutal, but it's fair. I think I think it's quite fair, but it is a brutal process.
Yeah.
But I think it's as fair as it can get. San Jose has a classified method of choosing who gets who, and but it's as fair as it can get really in terms of you get the opportunity to interview, they interview you, you create your ranking, they do too, and San Jose kind of makes the final say, right? So it's like match day if anyone's
Mhm.
like familiar with med schools. So
No, thank you. And then we asked if you applied more than once, what kinds of changes did you make to your application before reapplying? Did you have the opportunity to get feedback on your first application?
I applied once, so I don't know. Um, but I do know from other people that I know that have applied more than one time, the max is three, and every time you can only apply if you made like a significant change to your application, to improve it. But I do hear that um, if you apply again, you usually have a better chance of getting in your second time, or your third time. And I think because what happens too is, sometimes you just don't get a spot in the hospital. So if you know that they'll get you in the next round, they'll tell you like reapply, and then you can get in the next round if it had nothing to do really with your application. Because I believe it's 50 students that go in, and then there's only 25 spots, right? It was something like that. So 25 students,
I think there was even
don't,
less our
yeah,
class. Like it was like
don't get
less
a
than that.
spot at the hospital. So those 25 students, maybe they'll get in the next round. And it wasn't because of their application. It was just because there wasn't a spot at the hospital for them. So then they'll want to reapply again. So sometimes it's that kind of situation.
I think like a majority, I feel like the interview was at least like 80 people or something like that got
Yeah.
in. And only, I mean, only 20 something made it out. And it was definitely the low 20s, I think. So it's like it's a brutal process. It's hard. But yeah, if I did have to apply more than once, I would probably take one of the lab classes that they recommended. I had a bunch of labs from upper division, but I didn't have like medical micro lab or like those specific ones that they do for like clinical chemistry lab, those like extra classes you take outside of university. I didn't have that. And that's probably what I would have done if I had to reapply and then just continue working as like a lab assistant. Maybe you can consider your phlebotomy license if you're into that. Honestly, that was like the hardest rotation of my life. So
I know.
it's like too much for me. But But yeah, you can consider that. They always really like that too. Just
Yeah.
continue working and then maybe like brushing up on your classes. If you think your GPA is a problem, I would try to assess what you would think is the weakness. And I heard that they're pretty good at giving feedback, but I'm not positive, so.
And then, are there any other topics that stand out to you regarding the application process or anything else about your experience that you want to share?
Um, I would just say, emphasizing if you guys are gonna take the route to kind of take a 1 year break to work, really, like I said, just really get really good at your job. Make sure you lock in those letters of rec. That's huge. You guys are almost all about to graduate, right? Is that correct? So, hopefully you guys, your grades are up. They do two separate GPA. Your science is the one that gets submitted, I believe. Your science, just your science classes, that GPA, versus your general GPA. So I think it's your science ones that have to be above the 3.0. Um, I would say just to share this while you're in the program, just really uh, be mentally prepared to just spend a lot of time studying again and training. It's a lot. And for me, at least, I was prepared to take 1 year off and I kind of just missed all events that were going on personally. And I didn't make it to any birthdays last year. I didn't. It was so, but you mentally prepare for that before. And if you can, when you're with others, hopefully you have another student that's with you, like they will be your best friend, hopefully. So you guys could study together. Um, and really just work on having like really good relationships with your trainers at the hospital. They're your huge they're super experienced, so they can help you. They help you understand things differently. Like I think I was having a really hard time in understanding you guys will take in hematology with Michael Bowling, like the MCHC, in hematology, all those things were kind of hard for me to remember, like you to remember numbers for your boards and stuff. So get all the tips you can from your trainers, your CLS trainers. They'll have little ways that they've been remembering things and stuff. So, just um I think that's it. Just really like focus on getting really good work experience before you apply. And then when you're in the program, just be really prepared to just dedicate all your time to being in the program and really just making the best of it. I believe you can't have lower than a B while you're in the class. So, you have to be hitting a B in on your exams. And I'm not sure if you guys know how it is. You'll get your lectures on Monday and then you have the exam on Sunday for that lecture. And it's like that throughout the whole year. So every Sunday you have an exam for a whole year. Um, so yeah, like we said, like freshen up on your immunology before, just things like that.
But like on the bright side, you do get like a winter break. You do
You
get some
do?
breaks here and there. If your fall, your break is in the winter. And so it's like gives you a little bit of break in between lectures to kind of like you can enjoy the holidays, you can I don't know. I went out to New York for a weekend for a wedding and okay, bad idea because I had to come back. I came back at like 1:30 a.m. and then went to work at 4. But like it's possible, like you could do it. If you're a spring student, the advantage is that your break will come in like after your lectures end. So like 3 months,
Right.
and then you can take your test. I think that's really cool. That's a sweet spot that I totally didn't know about spring. I was fall. I think you're in your fall too.
I was spring.
Oh, spring. So yeah, spring gets that advantage. I think that's really nice. I had blood bank as my last rotation and my last lecture, so it was nice that I kind of retained blood bank and I didn't really have to study for it into my actual licensing exam. But that's like a benefit of spring, is if you're spring, you get a little bit of a break to study without having to worry about classes and tests and quizzes. So it's not like yeah, you have to dedicate your life to studying, but I think there's harder I think there's like worse out there, and you can still have a good time while you're in the program.
Uh, we also have like a direct message question, and someone asked, what would be a good place that you would recommend to look for lab assistant jobs?
If you guys are in the Bay Area, there's a ton of biotech companies. Just put on Indeed clinical laboratory assistant or laboratory assistant. If you guys can get into a CLIA lab, even better. So CLIA, if it's a CLIA certified lab, because CLIA kind of takes care of it's all clinical related. So you'll get the most out of it for your work experience. It's the most relevant. So yeah, Bay Area, if I'm not sure. Some hospitals will hire lab assistants without phlebotomy, right, Jacqueline? Is that what you did? Okay, yeah. So if you can get into the hospital as a lab assistant, even better. And I was gonna actually tell you guys because if you can be a lab assistant at the hospital that you're gonna apply for the like, for example, if you're at Valley Med as a lab assistant or like at Kaiser as a lab assistant, um, and you apply to the program, you get into the program, a lot of hospitals will take their internal employees as students. So that's already your foot in the door, like guaranteed your spot. If you can get in as a lab assistant at a hospital that has the contract with San Jose State or San Francisco, that's almost like a guaranteed spot for you that you'll be able to train there. So there's that. And then I think that's pretty much it. Just like biotech. Yeah, look on Indeed. Um, I'm not sure where else people Google, right? Google jobs.
I think I think at least down here, LinkedIn was really good for that. Not like perfect, but good. Honestly, I would actually just go straight to like your lo well, I've never worked in like biotech, but like I'm sure you could do the research for biotech companies near you and hospitals near you. Look at their official website, their careers page. You could probably just type in like whatever hospital career and then like look to see what openings they have and then just apply directly there too as well. That works. That's what I did for my second hospital that I went to. And I think I may have done that first through the first hospital. I use LinkedIn kind of as like searching to see what's out there, and then I kind of go directly to the hospital's website and kind of like see just to kind of like streamline that process a little bit more. If you streamline it with your with the whoever the employer is, right, then you're getting their official application and you're like ensuring that that application kind of reaches them. But I think yeah, just Google it, just put careers, yeah. And there's like it comes in waves. I've noticed fall, a lot of people come in and out. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the jobs come in waves. There's times when there'll be nothing and there's times when there'll be something. Be prepared to be flexible. Usually if you're a lab assistant, you're working every other weekend. Um, and then you're also variable shift some places you're not. Some places you're like stuck to first or second or graveyard. Be flexible. You can't always get a day shift. Unfortunately, that's not like the reality, but if you want it enough, you can always make it work. So just like kind of be open and just understand that it's you're gonna be working weekends. So yeah.
Yeah, and then if you guys on your interviews, this is just a tip because I used to do interview for my biotech job. We look a lot for even if you don't have experience working, just during your interviews, talk about, the schooling that you have that's relevant to the job they're doing. Because if you're applying at a biotech, more than likely they're doing some sort of cancer testing or genetic testing. So using those big words when you're in the interview and understanding, that's probably my biggest advice is when you're in the interview and you don't have any work experience, like do the research on the job, on their company, what they're working for. If you're gonna apply to be a lab assistant and they're just running like DNA extraction and PCR, then you better know what an extraction and a PCR is, because sometimes they'll want to ask you a little technical question, and that will if you at least understand it, they're like, okay, I can work with them, even though they don't have work experience. But I just from being on the interviewer side and when I'm interviewing, those are things that I was looking for. Like, okay, like did they take the time to at least understand like what goes through like a DNA extraction, like PCR, if it's cancer research, like um what markers are they working on in their testing for cancer or things like that. Because I when I was applying for jobs over the summer, um, I saw that there's all kinds of jobs right now in biotech, and they're working on a bunch of things. There's like a lab working on um, they're testing the fetus. I mean, like they're doing tests on the fetus, already checking it for genetic abnormalities at that job. So I think it's more like a molecular lab. So things like that, like definitely do your research on what it is that they're working on. And that really will help you stand out in your interview. Like a lot of you guys that are going to be graduating and looking for work, um, that will help a lot. Have a really good resume. So. I don't know if there's more questions.
Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the section 3, which is the training program questions.
Yes. I'll be taking care of that. So for our first question, how long was your training and can you share with us what your week/day looks like?
Mm, How long was your training? My training at the hospital?
Yes.
It's a little short of a year, I think, or over a year. Maybe I don't remember. I just remember I started February 28th and my last day was like February 20th. Um,
I think
and
mine was like a year.
okay, yeah. Did you also do it with San Jose State? Just so
Yeah.
that, okay.
Yeah, but I did fall like
Got
this
it.
past fall, yeah.
Okay. Um, Yeah, so my training Mondays was for lecture, so either it's pre-recorded or live. I think only in the summertime we had a live lecture and you had to be there for like 3, 4 hours. So Monday I would just use it for lecture day, watch my lectures, study. Tuesday through Friday, you're training at the hospital, usually in the morning. So I would start at 6 a.m. to 2:30. And then I would actually go straight from the hospital to a coffee shop with the other student, and we would study till about 8 or 9, go home, sleep, and do it all over again. Yeah.
You worked hard.
Huh?
You worked hard.
No, we did. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
you
was.
guys worked really
And
hard.
then and then we were out of school for a while. Like I had done my prereqs like way all undergrad, all of my undergrad, my prereqs were done. So I didn't refresh it on anything. Everything was very
The
new
study
to me
skills.
again.
Yeah.
So sometimes people will like, barely be finishing up their prereqs while they're working. So it's easier, but I was like, I couldn't even remember like what a neutrophil looked like.
Big mood. Now you never forget.
Yeah.
Um, Mine was also the same thing. Monday was lecture, Tuesday through Friday was training. The thing is, like, I always just created a little principle in order to have that break time in my life. I never did work on Sundays. I left it. So whatever thing I had, it was from Monday to Saturday only. Like, I always try to finish before Friday or Thursday to give myself like a little bit of a 3-day weekend. But it was always like I never did work on Sunday. I would take all my quizzes before then, all my homework assignments. Some sections will give you homework, some don't. Um, I would just basically just go home and study for 2 to 3 hours and then go and then just like kind of chillax a little bit and then do it over because you also have to like factor in that time that you need to study for your rotation. I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to like have all of my rotations lined up with all of the lecture in order. That was luck though. Okay, like that
That
doesn't
was
happen.
luck.
That it's straight luck. Like in I yeah, it doesn't happen, but like I know the other student who was training with me, it was like opposite. It was like completely opposite. Like she'll be doing like micro lecture, but she was doing like chemistry rotation. And now you're studying for two different things, right? Because you don't want to let down your trainers who expect a lot from you, and then you also have to keep up with your grades. So I can't, like, to be transparent, I never felt that struggle because it never was mine struggle, but I know it's something to think about. It's probably going to take more time. Like, and most people don't have it line up perfectly. Yeah, mine was like really weird. But so you have to kind of consider that you probably will be studying for a lot longer because you have your notes from actual rotation and your notes from school. And I don't know, I feel like just like I don't know how the people who did micro lecture and then some other rotation did it because that would be like superhero. I was like, I had micro lecture and rotation at the same time, and that was already like a lot. So it's the luck of the draw, but probably not. You're probably gonna take more time to study than I did. And then those last few months before your actual licensure exam is just like you're just straight studying like every day, like
Yeah.
nobody's business. You're pushing your bedtime a little bit longer. Get good sleep. Like always try to get enough sleep because it can tell. You can, I don't know for me, I can tell when it starts affecting my work. Like your just brain just feels like a little bit more foggier than normal. And so I always try my best to give yourself that time to rest. It's hard to do school and train and drive around to your training place and interact with people and basically do an interview every day with people, and I don't know, just try to rest like a good whatever you're like get some sleep like so that you can actually do a good job for the patients as well.
Thank you both for sharing. Our next question is, which departments of the lab are you trained in during your internship and were you required to perform phlebotomy?
What departments? So you'll do chemistry, hematology, blood bank, micro, in hematology. I don't know how your lab does it, but in hematology you also hit urinalysis, coag. Um, very little molecular. And we got to do 1 week at the public health department. I don't know if you did that. I don't know if it was just specific to mine because um, I think you're supposed to have like a virology rotation. So they sent us to the public health department, which was super cool, by the way. Like that was the coolest week. And yes, you will have to do phlebotomy. It's
Uh,
just 1 week though.
That's true. It's just 1 week. Oh my gosh, like 4 days. 4 days. But mine were very similar departments of the lab. I had like we've like got it chunked out into sections. So we did core lab, and within core lab, we had chemistry, coagulation, urinalysis, hematology, and something called float bench. And float bench is body fluids, like CSF fluid from your spine, pleural fluid, um, all of that. We did that was a core lab rotation split into the hematology urine coag cluster and then a chemistry cluster. In micro, we also had like a urine bench, a blood bench, and a routine bench. And we also did molecular in micro as well as we did acid fast things. So there was like a negative pressure room and all that. Those were all different benches. Blood bank, we had like rotation where we did the panels and then just like doing front triaging. And then the phlebotomy rotation. And I also had point of care, which I was able to do for a week as well. And so that was really cool to see that portion. We got to go into all the OR rooms. And yeah, it was cool. Um, that's kind of how your rotations, I think every like you had the public health week, which is cool. I didn't have that. I think they have like just like a set. They just like have set requirements for what you have to rotate in, and I think the
Yeah.
hospitals choose for how long. And yeah, I think that I heard that most people don't get to do body fluids, so that was cool, even though it's hard and acid fast. Not everyone also has acid fast bacteria there, so I never had to go out because we did do virology and parasitology in hospital as well. Um, yeah, and then phlebotomy, yeah, we had to do it. I think it's like 50 draws. 50 draws. We did like 8 hours, like full shifts, as much as you can poke. It has to just be an attempt. I think it doesn't have to be successful, but it has to be like an attempt. And the training is very like crude. It's like very, very like quick. It wasn't bad training, but it's like definitely not at the level of like a phlebotomist licensed tech
Yeah.
training. It's like, oh my gosh, like you get like 10 minutes. They'll show you exactly how to do it, and you're out there getting your 50 pokes, okay? Like there's no, yeah, it's kind of daunting. That was like the scariest week for me. But like it was cool, but it's just it was scary. But yeah, you can't avoid that, unfortunately. I would have tried. But I mean, it makes you appreciate the phlebotomist a lot more. So always appreciate your phlebotomist. Okay, they do like such a hard job. So yes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Our next question is, which department was the most challenging and why? Which department was the most enjoyable for you and why?
For mine, it was the most challenging was definitely micro. Also, I don't think we mentioned it before, but you'll spend well, I think it's standard across. You spend a solid like 3 months in micro. You'll be like 2 months in chemistry, and I think like a month and a half in blood bank, maybe, or a month. So those are the three though that you'll spend the most time in, and the rest it's like 2, 3 weeks. You'll just kind of go through it, but you'll be a solid amount in micro. I think I was in micro from um October all the way to January, I want to say, or like or yeah, maybe September all the way through like the end of the year to the beginning of the next year. Um, but micro was definitely like the most challenging only because it's a lot to remember. You're going to see so many different organisms and familiarize yourself with them. And it's a lot to remember. But you'll get really good at it at the end of your 3 months, like because you have to kind of be able to identify on a plate. You're looking at it and you're kind of like, okay, like the source is like a throat. So like my pathogen I'm looking for is like strep pneumo. So you have to be able to know what it looks like. What biochemical test can I run on the bench right now to give me like a preliminary result that it might be that so I can give the doctor something because usually if it's like strep pneumo, they're super sick. So things like that, which is why back to like my micro was the most helpful that I could have under my belt. And just I think because of the length of it and how much you have to know, that's why it was the most challenging. It's also the funnest for me, which is why I'm now in micro, because it's the most hands-on besides blood bank, I would say. But other than that, then my second one would definitely be blood bank. But I think I just noticed that I like anything that's more hands-on and you're using way more critical thinking, not to like not say the other benches don't use as much critical thinking, because in chem when your instrument's down you're totally critically thinking and figuring out why your QC is not passing. But blood bank and micro are a little more um if it's not matching like a textbook description of E. coli, and now you're kind of like, okay, why and what is this thing, and things like that. So it's a lot more critical thinking. Micro's a little bit slower too. There's no stats in micro, so because you need time for things to grow. But I know blood bank has its challenges because if there's a massive blood transfusion going on, that gets really really stressful. Jacklyn can tell you more about that. I haven't been back in blood bank as a CLS, just as a student, but it's really like blood bank is also really enjoyable just because it's more hands-on and you're kind of seeing the reactions happen in front of you. I think is what's probably the coolest part about like micro and blood bank. You're actually seeing the reactions happen in front of you versus in hematology and chemistry, you're loading them onto the instrument, so you don't get to see the reaction, but you learn it in lecture because you're learning what the instrument is doing inside, like the color change, but you don't get to see it because it's in the instrument, and you're just kind of looking at the quantitative side of it. But those are definitely my two favorite departments.
I agree. I think in terms of challenging content wise, it's for sure. I mean, in terms of like rotation content, then it would be for sure microbiology and blood bank, just because they are very theoretical and you need that theory. Like you're actually using the things you learn in school to actually do the work there. And wow, like I've met some microbiology specialists and I just have I swear I think they're the smartest people in the
Yeah.
lab. They are so smart. Like especially the specialists, like not even the generalists, the specialists, they're just so good at their job. You respect them so much for what they do for people. It's amazing really to learn from them and see that their thought processes and everything. But I found every department to be okay, but I think the most challenging is the departments that are what I call considering like a calling the shots in a gray area. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you'll see more often than not, nothing matches the textbook. Like the things that you see are not textbook and it's experience. And that is, I think, the hardest part is building confidence. Like you won't have confidence when you're, especially hematology, when you're counting slides, reading slides, diagnosing, like helping to like kind of like help the doctors diagnose, is this malignant? Is this normal? Or is this like, okay, is this just anemia? Or what am I calling? Am I overcalling? Am I undercalling? All those things can really like suffocate your brain when you're so unconfident of your call. And micro is much the same because you're calling these things and it's just hard. It's a gray area. It's not
Yeah.
black and white like chemistry. It's not like they're telling you what the reference range is. You are your own reference range. It's your kind of like your call. And I think that's the hardest thing that we don't understand. I didn't understand it as a lab assistant back then, and it's only when you're training and when you are a fresh CLS that you understand exactly why CLSs get paid what they are, why doctors get paid at what they are, and why nurses get paid at what they are. Is because they're calling these shots and they're calling these calls that you're making these calls that are actually life-changing. And I think that's what is the most challenging is suffering with the confidence level. You just have to do it. You just have to make the mistake. You just have to practice. It's experience. Like there's nothing that you can do to get around that. No matter how many books you read, textbooks you see on malignant cells, there's always going to be one that just looks like fine, but it's not. And you've got cytology to cover your back and everything like that, but it's like the confidence that you get that you might call something wrong. Just like in blood bank, you get a code RBC, will you freak out, right, in the face of that? And not every department is for everyone, and that's okay, right? Like you can find what's best for you. That's why you get variety. That's the nice thing about this like license. But it's just, like it's hard to call those. And it's the respect that you get for your coworkers that are really good, your senior techs, and then the respect you have for the doctors who ultimately take full jurisdiction for all that happens to the patient. Like you see it in real time. You see what happens, especially if you work in the hospital, like you see when they pass away. Right? Like you see when they're really sick. And it's those gray areas you don't want to miss it, right? But you can learn. Everyone's forgiving in the lab. They know like you make mistakes, some things you don't see, right? It's just your ability to learn from it. Like, can you take criticism? Right? You have to be able to take criticism. Like that's just like non-negotiable. You have to be able to say sorry. Just be able to say sorry. Like I'm sorry, I'll catch that next time. Like no pride, okay? Like we can't have like pride battles when you're training. You have to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. And even as a CLS, you have to be willing to say, I'm sorry, I didn't get it the first time. Like I'll fix it next time. Like it happens. And that's probably the most like emotionally challenging part. Enjoyable, all departments were enjoyable for me. I liked all of them. I liked blood bank especially because I loved the theory. But I did end up in core lab and I had options where to go, but I did like core lab. It has a really good variety of things for you, procedures. It is a lot more automated, which is what Yuriana was mentioning. It is a lot of automation, like the machines really do all the work for you, but you do get some to make some calls. Like hematology body fluid is pretty much all your call. Your analysis is also calls that you make. Coag is a lot of scary troubleshooting if things don't go right. And chemistry is just machines breaking every single day. You're just
Yeah,
IT. You're basically
seriously.
IT. Okay. Like, you're IT and an engineer all in one. Like I can't with those machines. But like, yeah, you'll have fun. It'll be fun.
Thank you both for sharing. I think this is our last question from our slides. Does anyone from the audience have any last minute questions before we conclude our meeting?
Thank you so much for our two panelists for coming in to share their experience on what the training program was like for them and what they liked best about it. I personally found it to be very insightful, and I'm sure everyone else. Oh, we have one last question from the chat. Is there anything you think people overstress or is more important than it actually is?
Overstress? I don't think so. I feel like,
I think that people under stress some things.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's more under. I would definitely say that for the purpose of your boards, I don't know, Jacqueline, you can maybe, I don't know if you're going to agree or not, but I think for the purpose of your boards, when you take them, the lecture part is much more important. What do you think? I don't know, because I mean, you're going to take some experiences from the hospital, but a lot of it on your boards might be things that you didn't really touch at the hospital because you're not going to see everything that's in the textbook. So for the sake of your boards, a lot of focusing more on like the lecture part of really getting your lecture stuff down. Because at the hospital, you're not going to see all these different cancers that are super important when you're in hematology that's in the textbook. You're not going to, you won't, in the couple of weeks that you're in hematology training, like, you're not going to see all these cases live. So, don't just rely on your rotation for the experience that you're getting, like to pass your boards. Like, you definitely want to be like lecture wise prepared for your boards. I think that would be the only thing, but other than that, yeah, like you said, under
Yeah.
stress, you should
Yeah. Chemistry
overstudy and be extra
lecture.
prepared.
Yeah. Chemistry lecture, microbiology rotation, blood bank, both. I think is the way you should what helps for the licensing exam. Chemistry rotation is not really going to help you. Lecture will.
Yeah.
Microbiology, your rotation will help you. It will help you recall, I think.
Yes.
Blood bank, it'll be a mix of both.
Hmm.
Yeah. Coag theory, it's going to be all lecture. So just think like core lab, lecture, micro, rotation, blood bank, both when you're
Yeah.
focusing on what's going to help you. And then I also want to say under stress, like sometimes it's about how much they like you, to be honest. Like when you go through the program, when you go through as a lab assistant, it is about how much they like you, not just the technical skills, right? Like it is people. Like, can you work with people? Like, can you be friendly to people? Can you communicate with people? Do you have good people skills in general? Are you a likable person? Are you someone that's easy to work with? Can adapt to quick changes. And so I do implore you to just be really careful with your actions, really think through, what things he's gonna say. You're on show for everyone. You're interviewing for every day as a CLS student, and it will lead to more opportunities down the road if you can make good connections and show a good impression inside to the people that you train with. Always be thankful and grateful for the time that they've given you and their knowledge they give you. Because really, sometimes in the end, it is about how much they are confident in you and they like you and see you as a competent like CLS, which is what you all want to be, right? People that your patients can trust.
Do you guys have any more questions?
I do want to add though, if anyone wants to like private message or email a question later on down the road, you can feel free to do that. You can I think you guys have my email on the board. Yeah, you can always just if you have a question down the road, whatever, 5 years from now, or whenever you're in, you can always ping a question, and I'll be always happy to try to help as much as I can.
Yeah, if you both are okay with it, we'll send out your email to our mailing list and our Discord so they can contact you if they have any additional questions that weren't covered. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be so happy, like if you guys need help like reviewing stuff while you're applying, or you guys want to get prepared for like an interview for a lab assistant job or something, we'd be more than happy to help you guys. I did want to add, just to make you guys, get like excited about applying. There's so much you can do with the CLS license, and you're gonna go through the program and kind of find your department that you love. And I said I hated micro, and then I ended up being in micro. And there's, you can go into education. So, and if you like working more with people, because some of the CLSs, like you become a CLS because you don't really care to be out on the walking around on the hospital floors. But if you like the more people, um, interactions with people, like point of cares, really, you're training nurses all the time. In blood bank, you get to see the nurses a lot, or go into like the OR rooms. Um, I really want to get into education. So as soon as I have enough experience, I want to actually be like the ed coordinator at the hospital that gets to pick the students and work with them. Because I think that was my favorite. My ed coordinator at my hospital was awesome. Like he was just always checking in on us, making sure check like mental check-ins with us. Like he was really cool, and he even got to let us. He also would host this like basically this introducing the field to like elementary students, middle schoolers, and high schoolers, and he would let the CLS students come and talk to them. And it's so like you can do so many things. You can also work at the public health department. So when we went for the week rotation, they also told us as a CLS license, you can work at a public health department also. It covers, but not the other way around. So I guess there's also a program to go the public health route, and they can't work at the hospital, but we can work at the hospital and at public health. So that's also really cool. Um, and yeah, there's just also depending on the hospital that you work at, everywhere's a little bit different. So like my hospital is a lot smaller in Salinas, so the CLS would still go on codes, which is usually CLSs do not go on codes at all. But that probably was my favorite part about that, because that's where you get to see if you still were interested in the medical fields, like somewhat kind of seeing the action. Some hospitals, you'll still get to go on like codes and stuff like that. So you're seeing all the action happening in the emergency room. And, then after a couple years, you can get into management, and you can also, I think, go off and be a field engineer. So if you just want to be the person that's going around and like working on equipment, and you like to travel, you could do that. My favorite was right now is I'm hoping in a year I become a travel CLS. So I really want to be a travel CLS. So there's a lot of options. It's a great field. So I really hope that you guys, all apply and all get in. And we'll see you guys because the CLS field is so small. You end up running into other CLSs that especially in the Bay Area. So
Emphasizing the good reputation, everybody.
yeah.
It's really easy to burn bridge, and don't do it if you can help it.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are really good tips too, by the way. Like
Yeah.
we spilled what a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, you
So,
guys,
yeah.
it's great. Like get your work experience. If you can apply within a year, just get like a solid, year of work experience. Apply. It's really good. After your reward, I started working, and then I like immediately took off to Thailand because I have a really good schedule. I mean, I'll share it with you guys, my schedule. I only work I ended up taking a part-time position for the moment, and I work only 3 days a week. I work PM 12 to 8. So I get 5 days off every other week. And so I've been taking trips in between and rewarding myself for the very stressful year that I had. So it's great. Like once you're done and you're working and you're kind of just, starting to live life again after a very stressful year, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, connect with us on LinkedIn or email.
Yeah.
You guys out as much as we can.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time out on a Friday evening to come and share your experiences with us. And we hope everyone else found it to be as insightful. And we hope to see you at our next event. And have
Yeah.
a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.